I put the title of my sermon this morning in the bulletin, not so much to scare somebody, because when you have a title like, How Do You Change the World? It seems like that could be a fairly sizable discussion, okay? A pretty big topic for only 25 minutes. But I think we can do that. And the reason why is because I want to take you on sort of a personal journey. I would like to have you join me in changing the world. I'd like for you to be a part of what has been my sort of personal journey to figure out how the world can be changed. You have to understand, if you can for just a minute, I grew up before there was a space program where people walked on the moon or anything. And so the internet that we had back in our day was called books. And it wasn't a Kindle Fire, it actually had a hard cover on it. And one of the things I guess I knew in my heart of hearts is I wanted to be a world changer. And I thought I would be good at changing the world. But how do you go about that? Well, my mom and dad signed up for a month-by-month book club, and they sent me every month a book just like this. I still have all of them. They were that important to me in my growing up years. This one I just happened to bring is on Alexander the Great, and how this young, very young king in Greece decided to change the world, and he just went through the entire known world of his day and claimed every part of that territory all the way down into India. An amazing conquest of the known world. An amazing young man. An amazing feat to change the world. And I read about him with eagerness. What was there about this man called Alexander that would change the world? And there were a lot of other ones, both famous, wonderful examples like John F. Kennedy, Pasteur, Louis Pasteur, Madame Curie. There were all kinds of world-changing characters that they sent me these books for. Some of them were notorious also, Adolf Hitler, and how he came to power and how he ran that world-changing event in that period of World War II. There were people of great note, and there were people that were kind of hidden, but they were important factors in developing the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb. Some of those very important world-changing people. And I tried to search for some sort of a common denominator. What did they have in common that brought them to the point where they could change the world? Well, that was my childhood vision. It wasn't very long as I grew till I realized that that's what Jesus Christ did when he came from heaven and came to earth in the form of a man to change the world. And he didn't end up with a wonderful throne like Napoleon. He didn't end up conquering a whole bunch of countries. He didn't discover any new science or medical breakthroughs. He never held an elected office. It seemed like that would be pretty much a waste of his life. And yet, he changed everything. He changed everything. If you read in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, you'll see that he didn't even think that he was doing something that we shouldn't be doing. He was God's son. Certainly he had divine influence, and he was the Savior for all mankind. But he had 12 people that he called to be his partners in changing the world. And in the 10th chapter of Matthew, you can read the whole chapter because it is his charge to his disciples as he sends them out 2 by 2 to change their world. And Here's what he says. He called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and heal every disease and sickness. And the names of the 12, I'm going to jump past that. Verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or into any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. And as you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Well, you ought to just have that tattooed on the inside of your arm so you can read it all the time. The kingdom of heaven is right here. The kingdom of heaven is right here. Every sermon ought to start with the same thought. The kingdom of heaven is right here. That near. Heal the sick. Raise the dead. Cleanse those who have leprosy. Drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Don't take any gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the journey and no extra tunic. No sandals or no staff. For the worker is worthy of his keep. And he goes through that whole chapter in the 10th chapter of Matthew, and he gives them the instructions and the warnings. He said, people aren't going to really understand you very well. They're going to have trouble with you. They're going to argue with you. They're going to cause you difficulty. And they're going to arrest you. They may even stone you. I didn't need that anyway. They're going to have all kinds of problems because they don't understand you. You're too weird. Oh, I'm sorry. Weird sounds weird, doesn't it? Or you're just on a different level of what moves people and what shapes people. And they will always assume that you have their narrow motives. Not mine. Not my heart. They will always assume you have their ideas, their selfishness, or their pride, or their agenda. And they'll see that in you. Don't be afraid of that, because they see that in me too. And he sent them out like wolves, or sheep before the wolves, to change the world. Why? Because the world is all tied up in a terrible, unbreakable, unworkable knot. That's where we live today. We live in a world of anger. Boy, if you haven't heard people just in a fit of rage, you haven't logged on to your email or Facebook or anything else, and people just hollering at each other over the polarized condition of our nation among our people. They're angry. They're mad at what they think somebody has done to them. We are in a world that is terribly sinful and broken and hurt. And people have, in many ways, just given up. There are Catholics who have given up on the Catholic Church because they've had so many abuses that have happened and so many cases where leaders within their church have let them down. But don't for a minute think that they're the only ones, because we have our own list of Jimmy Bakers and Jerry Swiggerts and Jimmy Swaggart and all the different ones that have let us down as well. And they've given up on the institution. Some of them have given up on church completely. I won't ever go back to a church. They've hurt me too badly through the years. People I depended on to love me have said things that were hurtful to me. And we've given up on our institutions, both in our local government and our national leaders. We've given up on, well, some of us as of last week have given up on the courts that were never supposed to be the last bastion of reason and thoughtful consideration. And some people have said, okay, that's it. I can't. And then they're going to believe in the court system, the judges that are supposed to be the wisest of all. We look at the world and we see people in relationships that are broken and hurting. We see children that are abused and abandoned. My son and daughter-in-law live in Knoxville. There are over 750 children in the Knoxville area. 750 children in the Knoxville area that don't have anyone to look after them. If you don't have volunteers to come up and say, I'll take care of that child. They're being called almost every single week. He said the hospitals are completely filled with babies that are either drug or alcohol poisoned at birth, and their parents can't take care of them, and they're looking for someone who can take these little tiny babies that are drug damaged and injured and take care of them. And they can't find enough homes. They're shipping them out to places like Chattanooga and Memphis because there are so many they can't find enough volunteer homes in Knoxville. We are in a pain-filled world. And some of the things that we're into are almost impossible to figure out how to get out of. Get a diagnosis of MS. And what are you going to do? Get a diagnosis of cancer. What are we going to do? Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2. They said, bring hope to a hopeless world. Bring love to an unloved world. Bring God's grace to a sinful world. Take the power of God in the situations where people feel like there's no chance of a cure, like in leprosy. They didn't realize it was a virus that was passed from one person to the other. And now we know how to take care of that. We know how to isolate that and destroy that disease. But they didn't have any hope back in those days. We have our own situations like that. Call it Alzheimer's or call it whatever you want to. It just seems like once you get that diagnosis, you're locked into a death sentence. But take my grace, my authority, and my love to those people. Paul writes at the end of his life, toward the end of his life, in the 11th chapter of 2 Corinthians. I'm going to read for you a few verses. And he's almost desperate. He'd gone to the city of Corinth, and he had worked with them, and he had loved them, and he'd taken care of them. It was one of his most difficult ministries. It certainly was the most difficult group of people he ever dealt with. And after he had showed them and discipled them and mentored them and changed their lives and made them strong, durable Christians, and he had poured himself out to them, people came along afterward and said, Paul's nothing. Paul's a failure. Paul's just a weakling. He's got nothing. We're the ones who have changed the world. We have all these accomplishments. We have all these things that we've done. Every once in a while, people get all cranked up and they start saying, well, I took care of a church of 2,500 people, and I have a big ministry, and I see people that come from here and there all over the country to come and hear my words. We have a church in Sarasota out here, Lakewood Ranch, that started with a great big building. They didn't have a single person in attendance. They went out and bought this great big building, turned it into a church. You know why they could do it? The big church in Texas said, we're going to show this community what God can do, and we're going to show you that we can fill this great big building. We're the ones who have the real truth. Paul doesn't have anything. He's just a weakling. He's a little pipsqueak. Listen to Paul's words. Almost in despair, calling out to the Corinthians. I repeat, he says in verse 16, 2 Corinthians 11:16. I repeat, let no one take me for a fool. But if you do, then receive me just as you would a fool, so that I may do a little boasting. In this self-confident boasting, I'm not talking as the Lord would, but as a fool would talk. Since many are boasting in a way that the world does, I too will boast. You gladly put up with fools, since you're so wise. In fact, you even put up with anyone who enslaves you and exploits you or takes advantage of you, or pushes himself forward, or slaps you in the face, to my shame, I admit that we are too weak to abuse you that way. We're too little and we're too weak to have taken advantage of you in that way. What anyone else dares to boast about, and I'm speaking like a fool, I also dare to boast about. Are they Hebrews? Yes. So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I'm out of my mind to talk like this. But I'm even more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I have received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I've been shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea in a time before there were life preservers. By the way, you might realize that he's talking about swimming in the ocean for a night and a day. No May West like we used to have back in the Navy. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger in rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in danger from Gentiles, in dangers from the city, in dangers in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false brothers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. And besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak? Do I not feel weak? Who is led into sin? And I do not inwardly burn. If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. The God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who was praised forever, knows that I am not lying. He said, you do too. He's calling the church to say, remember what you were like when I came to Corinth for the first time. Do you remember that? You were all tied up in knots. You were sin-driven. You were selfish. You were prideful. You had no clue as to what God needed or what God expected of you. Corinth was a nasty town. I guess I won't actually call names of maybe towns where I have been that basically cater to the lowest of what human nature is able to produce. And you couldn't go off ship more than just a few hundred yards, and you could just bump it into any sinful activity you wanted to right along the pier. That was Corinth. They were enslaved in sin. And Paul worked on his own, made his own living, sewing tents, worked in their ministry year after year, showing them what the truth really was, telling them about Jesus Christ. And slowly, one by one, change their world. That's what I want to really talk about, what we're doing here. You can be Alexander the Great, but he died as a very young man, and everything he created just slowly disappeared and was taken over by others. It didn't last. You can talk about all the great, wonderful leaders of history, and their events and their leadership may have contributed something important, but it was always eclipsed by the next one that came along. The one single person who changed the world, who was never, ever surpassed by someone who came along later, was Jesus Christ. And his ministry that changed the world was based on 2 simple truths. We can live in our world, making a difference in our community if we live by those same 2 simple truths. He was totally surrendered to his Father's will. Remember the night at the Garden of Gethsemane when he wept 3 different times? Went back to that big rock, left his disciples to sleep. They were supposed to be praying, but it was past their bedtime. And he went back to that rock and he knelt down in the Garden of Gethsemane and pled with his Father, please take this cup from me. It's too much. I can't do it. At the close of each one of those 3 prayers, he uttered these words, but not my will, but thine be done. The life of Jesus Christ is defined by, from the time he went in the earliest days out into the desert and spent 40 days without food and water, to the night when he knelt in the Garden of Gethsemane and said, not my will be done. His entire life was founded on the one single reality, totally surrendered to the Father's will. Totally surrendered to doing God's will. And the other eternal truth that he gave us as a command that would never change in all of eternity was to love each other as he had loved us. He poured out his life into people. He poured out his heart into people. In words, he poured it out. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the peacemakers. He was giving us his heart. He was pouring himself into our minds, into our spirits. We were taking him into our own ideas, and our hearts were changing. Love your enemies. Do good to those who persecute you. Those are not normal thoughts. Those are not the thoughts of our human nature. So when the last time someone said something nasty to you and you smiled and didn't respond in anger, you were actually having the Spirit of Jesus Christ inside of you working to bring peace. Because he showed us how to love. He gave us a chance to see what love looked like in 3 full dimensions. Not just a cardboard cutout that said, here's what a loving person kind of looks like. This is a real, living, breathing individual. He was faced with all kinds of challenges. He was faced with all kinds of difficulties. He had to take care of some very difficult people. Some of those were in the circle of 12 that he had chosen. He poured himself out to them. My friends, I want you to remember, not only did he break bread and share the Last Supper with his disciples, he got down and wrapped himself in a towel and washed the feet of everyone, including Judas. Even the one who in just a handful of moments was going to walk out the door and collect 30 pieces of silver to betray him. Jesus was washing his feet and standing and giving him a blessing that only Jesus Christ could give. What does it look like in our lives if we're going to change the world? It's going to look different than it did for Peter and James and John. It's going to look different than it did for Paul. They had their own talents. They had their own gifts. They had their own role to play in God's great kingdom-building event. It's going to look different for us. And if we go in with a preset idea, a preset plan of what it's supposed to look like, we're probably not fully surrendered. We're working out of our own selfish agenda. But if we're really surrendered to God's leading, he will give us a unique way to change the world. It will probably be painful. I just want to set you up for that. There's never been a person I didn't ask to come into church leadership that I didn't sit down and explain that they're probably in to collect some problems. They're probably going to get some grief, and they're probably going to have some resistance. But it's worth the effort. God's plan takes us to places we never expected to be. A lot of us take on challenges that we never would have expected. One time back in Indiana, there were 3 churches looking for pastors as I was searching for a new place to serve. And there were 3 congregations that were talking to me. And my best advisors came to me and said, if there's anything that we can say to you to give you our wise counsel, please don't take the one in the biggest city. Don't take that church. It kills pastors. It destroys pastors. Whatever you do, don't go to that church, because if you had any other place to go, take some other congregation and not one in that big city. They're not saying which city. You understand? But God opened the door to the church in the city. Do you say, oh, no, job's too hard. It's not where I wanted to go. I'd like to go into one of that country church back there that's got the nice parsonage and, no crime in the area and no racial tensions in the community and no bitterness and rage that, coming through from the different parts of the economic community that's there. I don't really want to be in the middle of a mess like that. No. You see, when God leads us there, He brings the best out of us. We rise to the challenge as He gives us inspiration and He gives us the tools of how to deal with people and how to take care of things. We will never be any better ever in our whole lives than when we're working in obedience to Jesus Christ, wherever He leads us. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy answers. There's no simple fixes. I remember one time I had a guy that said, every time I'm not in church, you know where I am. I'll let you know where I am. I'm down at the church down the street. They have a lot of miracles happening in their church. And I always think God's stronger over there. And so I'm going to go over there where all those miracles happen. It wasn't too long until that church was closed because it was a trick. They were trying to manipulate people. There's no simple answer. I had one guy say, we're only going to call a successful pastor to be our pastor. We're looking for a new pastor. We're only going to accept the resumes of men who have obviously done successful ministry in different communities. Nice, easy answer. I'm not going to have to pray about it. I'm not going to have to stew about it. I'm not going to have to wear out my knees over this thing. I'll just look at their resume and I'll say, oh, this church grew while he was there. That's easy. It was a miserable failure. If you're trying to figure out how to do something without being in total surrender to Jesus Christ, there's no easy shortcuts. God turns our world from a desert wilderness to a beautiful garden with little tiny drops of rain, not with a tsunami. We watched a tsunami over in Japan a year ago. Was that something beneficial and a blessing, or was it totally destructive? It was both water. But the nice rain shower is a water, so is a tsunami. God takes individuals like you and I, and He puts us in a community, and He gives us a chance to do acts of love. And like little drops of rain, we fall upon the ground and we're absorbed into the community, and it doesn't look like individually they really amount to very much. But God blesses that. And out of that watering that we do in our community, miracles happen. Lives are changed. If we came in with a sense of just washing over with all this power, with all this grace, it would scare people, and we would tear up things that would be otherwise very beneficial. We are to be drops of rain in God's showers of blessings to a community. And then I want to just share with you, it's never too late to start. A lot of people say, I'm past those years, I'm done. My life is pretty well completed. I've already finished everything I can do. I'm washed up. I'm down at the end. My dad's 90 years old. Every once in a while he'll laugh about how the best days for him are behind him. 90 years old. I mean, if he hasn't accomplished it, he's not going to get done, right? He had his shot. No. Every day, he goes down to the Emeritus Nursing Home, walks into that memory clinic, and there are 30 people in there that he blesses. He is a blessing to every single person on that memory clinic ward every single afternoon. A few minutes, I'm going to take him down there. He's going to do it again today. 90 years old, changing the world. Are they ever going to get their memories back? No. But he's going to give them peace. If the worship team would come forward, we're going to close with a word of prayer as you come forward to sing the closing hymn. But I want you to understand, if we draw the limits on what God can do, if we draw the limits on how far we can go, what we will be willing to accept, we will always shortchange God's eternal plan. And the world won't change like he had it in mind to do. God has amazing ideas of what he'd like to do in the community of Grace. And all we have to do is do two things. Surrender